Hey everyone, first and foremost I want to thank my patrons, Kevin and snarkbottom loof. Thank you for choosing to support me on my YouTube journey. If you would like to do the same, check out the link in the description. As always, thank you for watching my content, and please enjoy. So my ex and I would always break into abandoned places. Rolling Acres Mall and Edwin Shaw Mental Asylum were our favorite too. However, every now and again we would find worn and tattered houses and explore them. One particular house we entered had a massive garage in the back. When we got in, we found an older model, probably early 70s Monte Carlo. The front end was smashed and there was blood all over the steering wheel and seat. Now, our normal rule was to take nothing but pictures, but in this case, it intrigued me so much I took the keys out of the ignition. The following 4 nights, I had the exact same dream. An older gentleman would approach me. He had blood on his face. He would place his hand on my shoulder, and he would calmly say, "Please return those, son." Same dream every night for 4 nights. Once I had an opportunity to return them, I had one last dream. The same older gentleman, with the same blood on his face, approached me, placed a hand on my shoulder, but this time, said thank you. There's an old dirt road close by that teenagers like to ride around on during the weekends, at night, whenever they could. One night, 3 friends and I decided to go ride on it in my truck and one of my friend's Mustang. We were riding each other's bumpers and having a good time when we noticed a third vehicle. The 4 of us had not told anyone we were out there, so this third vehicle was either more teens wanting to scare us or an elderly person with a bone to pick. The friend driving the Mustang, we'll call him Jay, threw his car in reverse so we could confront this person using his reverse lights. But as soon as the light hit the mystery vehicle, it stopped cold and quit running. It was an old brown panel van. And after me and another friend, let's call this one Al, investigated, it was empty with no keys in the ignition. We spent a good 10 minutes waiting for this van to do something, but it didn't. As soon as we all got back into our respective vehicles and put them in drive, the van came back to life. I led the way back to the paved road, pushing my truck as fast as it could go, completely freaked out. Once Jay's Mustang was back onto the blacktop, the van stopped following us and disappeared back into the dirt road. I haven't went back, and I hope I never get the bright idea to go back. The weird part? No one in any of the towns in the area has a brown panel van. This happened to me during my freshman year of high school, and even to this day, it still scares me. I had just gotten home from school, and when I normally walked into my house, I was greeted by a talkative black and white furball, my cat. Every time when I came home, I would shout out to the animals, "Hey guys, I'm home." But my cat was quiet, and that was not normal for her. I didn't think anything of it at the time, but as I was doing my homework and chores, I could hear something like footsteps coming from upstairs. Now, this wouldn't have freaked me out if it wasn't for the fact that no one was up there. My dad was at work and my mother was either finishing up work or on her way to get my brother from school. The noise only continued as I tried to ignore it, and after some time, I got fed up with it and decided to investigate what was or who was upstairs. I went to my room and got a Nerf gun so I would have something to stun the person or whatever it was for a few moments when I saw them. And with that, I slowly made my way upstairs, making sure the front door was locked. As I made my way up the staircase, I could hear the noise again and again. It was only when I reached the door that it stopped. I could feel my fear telling me not to open the door and to run back downstairs and call someone. But instead, I took a deep breath and held up the gun to get ready to shoot at what was behind the door. I opened the door only to find nothing. No one was up there, and the only thing really there was a red bracelet with a silver heart on it around the door that led to the attic. As slow as I could, I made my way inside the room and over to the bracelet, and even though I knew nothing was up there with me, I could still feel like something was right behind me. and the feeling only went away when I held the bracelet in my hand after taking it off the doorknob. I looked around for a moment to make sure that I was truly alone and went back downstairs after closing the door to the upstairs room. Even to this day, I still have that bracelet, and since that day, nothing has happened. I don't know what it was, but it sure as hell scared me to death. When I was 2 years old, I encountered my first entity of evil, a demon. It all started one nice sunny day, like any other normal day. At the time, I was only 2. I was home with my grandmother that lived with us at the time. This is what was told to me when I took a nap. Also, my parents had left for work, which is something I didn't know at the time. Being 2 years old, I figured they were working around the house and were downstairs. Well, you know how little kids are more open to the spiritual world. Well, that's what it was like in my case. What I thought was my parents was not at all my parents. I went to the top of the basement stairs. The basement was dark. The only light that was there was the natural light coming in from the basement windows. It was common for my parents to go downstairs with the lights off. My mom would switch loads of laundry and my dad would go to his hobby room with all of his model trucks, trains, cars, and planes. I called out to my parents looking for them. "Mommy? Daddy? Mommy, where are you?" Then I heard it. An inhuman growl. "We don't have dogs anymore. They passed away," I thought. "Mommy, are you there?" Then a terrifying hiss. I froze, terrified. I could feel the evil presence. I swear I made eye contact. It held its gaze and I held mine. It was like a staring contest, except for the winner gets my soul or the throne of dominance. It felt like an eternity until it seemed like the demon had broken eye contact and walked away. I went back upstairs and asked my grandmother, who was alive at the time, how long I had been there. She said 5 minutes. It felt like 3 hours. Being a 2-year-old, it was terrifying. About 4 years ago, I moved into a new house. It felt normal at first, but after a few months, I started to feel like something was watching me, and I started waking up feeling paralyzed. I remember one night waking up and wanting to go to the bathroom. This time, I didn't feel paralyzed, but my chair had moved from my desk next to my bed. At first, I thought it was my older brother taking my charger like usual, so I thought nothing of it. So I got up to go to the bathroom and went to turn on the light, but the bulb had blown, so I used the flashlight on my phone instead. I put my phone on the floor, and when I looked up, I could have sworn I saw a face. I can't really describe it. I have a very faint memory of that night. I never told anyone about the face, as I was probably just tired, but when I asked my brother, I found out that he was at a friend's house. I never see him because he's always hidden in his room. A few months later, nothing happened, but in December for Christmas, we all went around to my Nan's house and I was up in one of the rooms watching YouTube because I was an antisocial child. She bought me a new writing book because I liked writing. I heard rolling from upstairs, like someone dropping a large marble and rolling it around. It went on for a while. I was scared and a little disturbed. I went home with the exact feeling. I couldn't sleep that night. I felt like I had just gave away my soul. My head felt as if it was going to explode. A few months later, I felt more and more disturbed, as if I was being watched like when we first moved in. I always heard my name being called when I was alone. That feeling never went away till we moved out. I couldn't remember any more encounters, but all I know is I was never really alone in that house. This is a true story of something that happened to me as a teen. People always insist I was asleep and dreaming when this happened to me, but that isn't true because I've always had great difficulty falling asleep, especially at night. Even if I take sleeping pills, it can take me anywhere from 30 minutes to 3 hours before I fall asleep, and this happened within a space of 5 minutes of lying down, far too short of time for me to fall asleep. I'm my parents' only daughter and the youngest. I have 3 brothers whom have always had a touch more freedom than me. Perhaps because my parents are the silent generation and therefore a bit more repressed, or they overly worry because so many bad things happen to girls and women in this world. The point is, even well into my teenage years, they always insisted I sleep with my bedroom door open so they could hear me if I screamed. Even when firemen would come to school and say, if you don't let your kids sleep with their door closed, they're more likely to die in a fire, my parents wouldn't relent. My door had to be open, and so did theirs. From my bed, I could see a small part of the hallway, including the oval full-length mirror attached to the wall. I hated this mirror. Always had. Even as a small child. Not because I thought it was evil, but because I'm fat and I thought it was a constant reminder that society sees me as ugly and worthless. A woman's value, even as a child, is put on how pretty she is, and she's not pretty unless she's thin. I was a fat child, a fat teen, and a fat adult. Therefore, society tells me daily I have no value. Every time I left my room and passed this mirror, I was constantly reminded that I had no value as a human being. So I already had a deep hatred for this mirror when the events occurred. The first night it happened was just the same as it would be every night until I figured out how to make it stop. Everyone else was already asleep. Now, I was ready for bed, turning off my TV and most of the lights. I opened my door, then went across the room to my bed. I glanced at the clock. Midnight. Good thing the next day was Saturday so I could sleep in. I had just laid down when I felt my eyes drawn to the mirror hanging just outside my bedroom. I found myself unable to utter a sound as I watched a figure step out of the mirror. It was a human shape with a masculine aura, but all black. A shadow with no more dimension to it than a piece of tissue paper. I would say if it was more of a human, he'd be about 6 feet tall. He came into my room, then slipped along the wall, stopping in front of my closet door, which was across from my bed. I saw his head jerk around as he looked at me, then vanished. As soon as he vanished, that's when it happened. A massive feeling of being crushed came upon me. I couldn't move, couldn't breathe, and couldn't even close my eyes. There was nothing there to be seen. Just the physical sensation of being crushed down. Ever read of pressing? It was a type of torture used during the Salem witch trials where they would slowly put more and more weight on your chest until you died. It was like that, and suddenly, it was gone. I took a deep breath, a deep, shaky breath, and looked at the clock. 5 minutes had passed since I first laid down. 5 minutes is not enough time for me to fall asleep. I hadn't even closed my eyes. I knew that this had really happened. It was not a dream. And yet I also knew I couldn't tell my parents about it. My mom would accuse me of doing something like playing with a friend's Ouija board, and Dad would say that demons were coming to turn me away from God. I'd be dragged into church, a place I hated as much as the mirror, but for different reasons. Not because I don't believe in God, I just don't believe in or trust God's followers. I've seen too much hypocrisy in the church, from racism to letting a deacon get away with sexual assault, to a minister embezzling money and running off with his secretary. God to me cannot be found in a church, for those who attend it have banished the Lord from it. So I suffered these attacks every night in silence and alone. I tried to find out more about them from books at the school library. The internet wasn't the thing it is now. In fact, this was before things like AOL even existed, so I had to rely on outdated books in an underfunded library. I discovered sleep paralysis, but I knew that wasn't what was happening to me since, well, it was happening to me while I was awake. Finally, in desperation, I grabbed an old Bible off of my own bookshelf and that night shoved it under my pillow. I held onto it, praying God would protect me from whatever that shadow was trying to do to me. Torture me until I went mad? Or just kill me? One of the former owners of the house where I grew up in had killed himself. Perhaps this thing was the reason why. After all, my bedroom was the original owner's study. I should tell you the ghost stories I have, but they're not as scary as this was. Just manifestations of things like a solitary jean-clad leg in the middle of our kitchen, or the sound of a smoker's cough and the smell of cigar smoke from the bathroom that he had shot himself in, when no one was in there and no one in our family smokes. Maybe this same thing visited him at some point. I fell asleep that night without being attacked. In the morning, I put the Bible back on my bookshelf, but it went back under my pillow that night. I kept this up for 2 weeks until I finally felt safe to sleep without it. Whatever that shadow creature was, I somehow drove it away. I've tried through the years to tell people about this, but even those who believe in ghosts dismiss me. They say I was sleeping, it was all a dream, just sleep paralysis. Many even made fun of me, acting like bullies on a school playground. I stopped talking about it for a long time because of how cruel people could be about it. We still have that mirror and I still hate it, but the house has been remodeled and the things that used to happen no longer do. Perhaps tearing off the roof and down most of the walls released whatever was in there. I don't know what the Shadow Man was. I just know I wasn't asleep, and it wasn't a dream.